entire weekend, game 1 and 2 were a religious experience. They were so cool. Like, honestly, shout out to the Liberty for the way that they handle game ops as well, because sometimes you go into these arenas and they have so many bells and whistles that all like the whole dog and pony show, it just feels bigger than the game. And the thing that I came away so impressed with was the fact that in both of these games, the fans in the basketball were still at the forefront. They were still the most important part. And all of the other stuff was still very organic to the fan experience, to the New York experience. Like, whether it's like the construction of Ellie in and of herself, you know, is just so deeply embedded into what the Liberty are, what their fan base is. Like, it's always, everything she does is like, it's half like a cheerleading routine, but half it feels like she could just be like going down like a drag runway. It's just like, it's such a beautiful, potent mix. And the fans are really into it. Like, I was really curious going in whether it had become one of these like trendy things, like people in New York go to Liberty games because it's like the cool thing to do. But it really wasn't that. Like, you got fans that really are invested, that know what is going on in the games, that like understand basketball. Kind of like Knicks games are, you know, like Knicks games obviously have a big celebrity contingent, but also those celebrities are like fans, like they're truly invested. And I feel like you could see that with like game 1 as well. Like, you know, you get your repeats, like you get your Sudeikis's and like your Spike Lee's and stuff, but like you also, like game 1 having Aubrey Plaza there, who's like been to like multiple Knicks games, Liberty games, is a basketball fan, and like reading her book and like doing her little Aubrey Plaza bit, I thought was really fun. But just a great experience overall. Had so much fun.
I'm so happy to hear that. I just like that you called Spike Lee and Jason Sudeikis repeats. Like, you just kind of brush them off as like normal comers, which is true. They have been at multiple games, but those are some pretty big stars too. So yeah, everything you said though is spot on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the fact that they are like now part of the regular tapestry is, I think, really cool, honestly. Like, it's just like there's so much energy, there's so much, you know, you get to spend a week in New York. It's like the best place in the world. Like, it has, oh, are you a New York person?
I am. I'm born and raised in New York City.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. All right. Well, okay, you get it then. You get it. It's a special place. Like, but yeah, game 2 like broke an attendance record for the Liberty. And was also, you know, like the most watched WNBA finals game since 2001 as well. I think what was it? These numbers just came out. It peaked at 1.8 million and averaged 1.34 million.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, all playoffs long, it seems like the records just continue to fall.
Yeah, no, it's been fun, and I wanted to get into a feature that you wrote. I figured we would do it in the back end, but since we're talking about it, you and Mike Vernikov came out with a feature this morning, actually, about the growth of the WNBA and how, you know, like the two major things were the wobble and these like in capital investment that came post wobble that really set the WNBA up for this moment. But one thing that I thought was so fascinating was I think it was Claire Wu was who's Joe Tsai's husband, like the owners of the Liberty. They were talking about purchasing the Liberty and how it was a distressed asset at the time. But they saw this potential of what it could turn into in terms of like the New York media market, in terms of how much people love basketball, and like that this was a fan base that was just waiting for some investment and something to really root for. And like, man, like you really saw that borne out in these first 2 finals games. Yeah, just a lot of fun. But like, yeah, I guess like tell us a little bit more about the piece and just like how it connects to the Liberty.
Yeah, I mean, the conception behind the piece was that for the last maybe year or two, I just kind of heard Kathy Engelbert in press conferences say that the 2020 moment, the COVID pandemic and the league's decision to play was like an existential moment for the WNBA. And like usually when that word is thrown around, it's not just like put in lightly. Like there is some weight and consequence to using the word existential. And so the conception of the story was just like, one, trying to actually understand and see, like, if they don't play that bubble season, would we be having this conversation? Like, would the WNBA exist right now in 2024 with, you know, all the popularity, all the attendance soaring, the business seemingly in really good shape. Like, just would any of that have happened? And then from there, we kind of wanted to trace another really important moment in the WNBA's recent timeline, which was this capital raise. And so that happened a year or two after the decision to play in the bubble. And they got $75 million from a lot of different sources, some with ties to the NBA, some outside investors. Nike, we reported, was in for $25 million in the WNBA and had this investment stake of $25 million. Michael Dell, another notable person that came in. And so, it was this big moment for the league to basically be injected with outside capital. And it was really important because they used that money for a number of different purposes that has helped them, I think, get prepared for the moment that the league is in right now, and really lay some of the groundwork and foundation for it. So some examples of that, I mean, they talk about increased globalization, right? That was one of the priorities of the capital raise, stated usage. We obviously saw multiple exhibition games in Canada, this firsthand, and a Toronto expansion team is coming very soon in 2026. The league underwent a digital transformation, unearthing a new app and website. It put out more promotional and paid media campaigns as a result. And it just hired more people. And that, I think, really was important here, too, because Kathy Engelbert told us that, it had 12 employees roughly, back when she took over.
Away by that.
A crazy number when she took over as the commissioner in 2019. Now, it still works out of the NBA's Midtown office, but it has more than 60. And they hired their first chief marketing officer. They have more than 24 people who work on the marketing team, up from just one when she started. So all of that is kind of the groundwork for this moment. And then to the Liberty point is that the Liberty, much like the league as a whole, the Tsai family viewed it as this distressed asset that was just waiting to be re-energized and rejuvenated. They purchased the team from James Dolan. He had moved the team towards the end of his time owning it to Westchester County Center. Didn't really have any fans, really bad experience for players. And suddenly, as you said, and we talked about at the top of the show, look at Barclays Center now. This is very much what they saw when they bought the team and very much what they wanted when they moved it into Brooklyn.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those reminders too of just how young the WNBA is. Reading some of the numbers that you put out, especially the 12 employees, one person working on marketing, it really was a shoestring operation. And now you're seeing more and more investment. And I'm kind of curious as the investment continues to increase. We've been throwing around an idea for a podcast down the line of if I was commissioner for a day, what would I do? And there has been a lot of conversations about oh, the WNBA needs to fix this, WNBA needs to fix that. You see it, especially I think the one place I see it a lot is with reffing, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit as we talk about game 2. What would your kind of commissioner for a day, if I could do anything, and it didn't really matter what the cost was and what resistance there was going to be, what would you do next?
That is a very, very good question. I mean, the first thing I guess I would say is continue to hire more people, which feels like a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I think for a league that is as young as the WNBA, we've seen that just having more resources that they can put to different services around the league can really pay dividends, whether that is more people who are invested in player experience, more people on the marketing side, more people who can ensure that some of the hiccups in terms of arena scheduling or broadcast issues that people have, you get the sense that so many people at the league are maybe stretched thin or just wearing so many different hats, that I think having just more bodies would go a long way in continuing to help the acceleration. I know that's not maybe the most glamorous answer, but I think that's, this story proves it out, and we've seen it over time that just having more people, and this is true of so many different companies, having more people can really just change what a company is able to do. And that at the end of the day is what the WNBA is. It is still a business at its core.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that answer because I think it speaks to just some of the more basic answers behind why there are certain things that still go on in the WNBA that that don't in other professional leagues. And it's been one of the sort of pieces of education for me as a newer fan, just talking to more people around the league about why certain things are the way they are. It's logistical. A lot of it really just is logistical. One other thing that I found fascinating too was when Engelbert had her press conference before game one of the finals, she was asked about expansion, and how there are like 10 to 12 teams that are now vying for that last expansion spot. And even when she said it, I was like, oh man, like this makes a lot of sense because the WNBA right now is so hot and there are so many cities that would potentially want to make a bid. She said it was 10 to 12. So, I mean, gosh, like, boy, can you create a bidding war with something like that? But something that was in your piece was they actually decided to like hit pause on the search and reassess where things stand and hire an investment banker to run it. That was fascinating to me.
I mean, it just reflects what you said. Like, there is now a real market out there for team number 16. And I don't think the league is in any rush to announce that team or decide who is going to get it. For all the reasons we've kind of just talked about, that like they want to do it right. And they also want to see, more importantly, like what is the fee that we can get for this last team? Because, you know, what was yesterday's price is no longer today's price for WNBA exactly. expansion teams. And Toronto saw that, Portland saw that, and certainly the Golden State ownership group. I mean, they're looking real pretty for what they got in the league for, because that price is no longer what it takes to get in the WNBA.
Yeah, you also reported that what the Valkyries paid was half of what Portland had to pay, which is incredible. And I'm kind of curious, like, so there are a number of teams that could potentially be vying. You have your Houstons, your Bostons, Nashville as a potential team. Do you have a dream expansion team?
A dream market? I mean, not necessarily. Like, personally, selfishly, I'm New York based, so I'm okay in terms of seeing WNBA basketball in person. Yeah. Like, I get my fill. I do think, like, you know, the Portland choice, it makes a lot of sense, but certainly it creates another West Coast team and a West Coast market. I do think kind of the Midwest and the middle of the country is a little bit underserved, and the Southeast specifically is another area. Like, you know, the Miami market was one that was introduced early in the WNBA's history and then went away. Like, I think Nashville is one of these cities that does make a lot of sense, right? Because there isn't really a team that close in that area. So, you know, that is one city that I think does make some sense. You know, would it be great if a team went to Philly or Boston and there was another East Coast market? Yeah, but you know, I'm all for kind of spreading the love about where this 16th team should be put.
Well, yeah, and I mean, in Nashville, then you get like this big Southern basketball fan base too. Like, you get the SEC, you get like your South Carolinas as well. Like, you get Tennessee itself. Like, you get probably LSU even. Like, I mean, is there like, you know, and maybe you can do that in Houston as well, which could potentially, I know there's a lot of people that want the Comets to be able to return. And I think that would be a nice full circle thing as well. Miami, I'm sure there are no players that would be against that, but I'm wondering, like, if you could go back in hindsight, if you're the WNBA, no offense to Portland, but are they, you know, maybe if they could go back in time, I don't know if Portland would have been exactly the choice, because I'm looking at all these cities and I'm like, I would love to be able to pick two, you know? Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious. Do you think they could, like, they want to do 16 by 2028, but I guess, like, if things keep going the way that they are, there is a potential for even more, like, down the line. But you don't necessarily want to grow too quickly either. Like, that can be a mistake as well.
Yeah, I think that will be the question that I think some people in the league office will have to confront, is like, there's clearly going to be a lot of business interest and a lot of people vying for these teams, willing to pay for them and, you know, put in practice facilities and have nice arenas and, you know, commit to the player experience. But then at a certain point, you also wonder, like, is the quality of play going to just, you know, decrease a little bit because so much of the talent then has to get reallocated and spread out? I think that's definitely the question they're weighing, or will weigh, I imagine, over the next couple of years as they decide kind of the future of this league going forward.
I got to spring this on you out of nowhere, and I apologize. Who are the most #heat culture WNBA players?
Wow, #heat culture. I mean, is Asia Wilson not the clear answer here?
Oh yeah, no more long distance. I love it. Ben, you're such a romantic. That's incredible. I like it. I like it. I would love to see the Miami Heat culture in the WNBA. I think there's just been so much yarn to thread from that angle for me in the NBA. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
I will throw out one other name, and it connects to the
Mhm.
series. Is Courtney Williams? I think would fit pretty well on the Miami Heat. Just like mid-range jumpers, a fearless attitude, plays with grit. Like, I think she would probably clash some with Pat Riley, but like in kind of an endearing way, the same way she does with Cheryl Reeve. Like, I think I could certainly
Mhm.
see her like being a spark in the equivalent of the Miami Heat in this analogy.
I mean, Pat Riley likes to butt heads, you know. I think that's why the Jimmy Butler thing has worked there so well. But Courtney, yeah, she has this mix of infectious confidence. She has a journeywoman angle. She didn't go to a big school for college. Like, she is kind of like your perfect undrafted Miami Heat player who then comes in and makes a huge contribution during the finals. And absolute, like, it's like a credit to the Heat or the Lynx's ability to identify like a dormant talent and then blow it up and make it fit within their system. It's like it's actually kind of a perfect crossover.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works really well. Is there anything you want to hit on with the article or just the growth of the W before we talk about the actual game?
No, I mean, I think that was really it. Like, I think the other thing I would say is like Caitlin Clark is obviously an accelerant to
Right.
this league and
Mhm.
the growth of the business. But I think one of the things that we tried to make the point of in the story is like there was a foundation that was being laid and there were choices that were being made that helped put it on this trajectory as well. And, all of
Mhm.
these things are combined to get the record viewership, the heightened attendance, the landmark TV deal. Like all of these things are working in concert with each other. And Clark really is an accelerant on top of that. I think you can't separate the two, but they're important to acknowledge both.
No, I think that's a really good way of putting it. And like you see it in the numbers. They're bearing themselves out, right? Like it's not like Caitlin Clark is playing the WNBA finals. Now, granted, there's definitely a newer fan base that's like trickling in and probably like likes going from like the style of how Caitlin Clark plays to, the Minnesota Lynx who pass the ball incredibly well to like New York Liberty who have like Sabrina Ionescu. Like there's that aspect of it too. But at the same time, if the Liberty hadn't laid down this foundation where if every time you tune into a Liberty game, you're like, how can I go there? I would like to be there right now. Then, there wouldn't be much for the new fans to trickle down to. And there is.
Yeah. I mean, it is a testament that like they have been building these cultures over time. And New York is a really good example of how to build it back up.
Yeah, yeah, and we had Jackie Powell on a couple weeks ago, and she kind of made this point when the Aces were playing the Liberty that these are the two franchises that have been competing with each other business wise and on the court wise to push the WNBA to a new frontier as well in terms of like practice facilities investments. Both teams that have gotten in trouble with the WNBA as well in terms of providing player services that might be CBA violations as well. That's my commissioner for a day. If a team wants to do something that like improves the experience for their players at this juncture of the WNBA's growth, you got to look the other way. That just needs to be applied as pressure for the rest of ownership, like in these other teams to then get on their level. That would be my only. That would be my CBA note. And I get that it would break the rules, but I don't care.
I was going to say, maybe you have me back on. Maybe in a couple months' time, we'll have more on the CBA to discuss about
this is a good point.
How the player experience is changing or will change going forward. I guess time will tell after this finals.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's talk about the game. The Liberty bounced back, and it's an incredible environment. It is so loud in there. It's like deafening. And one thing that I found to be really interesting was the way that Sabrina Ionescu was playing with the crowd. You also wrote this article for The Athletic too, where you did a feature on Sabrina. But one thing that I found to be so interesting was Olaf Lang, an assistant for the Liberty, said that there were times that Sabrina used to play into the crowd a little bit too much, like maybe get caught up in the highs and lows of it. But now she just kind of plays her game. And I really felt that like there is a restraint to the way that Sabrina Ionescu plays off the crowd. I almost feel like there are times when they really want her to go like full bore, like be like a showwoman. And she like almost denies them in a way, or she just gives them like breadcrumbs. But there was a moment in this game where she hit a three and she's like waving to the crowd to get louder, and it's like they love it. It's almost like it's a bad metaphor in terms of, like I think it's a much more positive relationship, but it's almost like watching somebody who is like in a situationship and they don't get a lot of text back, but like but it like creates like all this anticipation, and when you do finally get the message back, like it just creates a lot more excitement. Like there's like this withholding aspect to the way she kind of plays off the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting thing to observe, and you're spot on. Like Sabrina, the crowd like really does waits in so much anticipation for those big moments. And she does, I think now more than she did in the past, pick her spots to like bring them out. And when they happen, like when New York gets an offensive rebound, a tip out that leads to a Sabrina Ionescu three, like those are the moments where the home court advantage and the fan base really comes alive. It's that, and when Leonie Fibish, to me, like hits 3-pointers in the corner, which, some of her teammates describe as layups. Like those are the moments for me, having gone to games over these past couple of years, these 2 years of this current team, like that the crowd just gets the most into it. And you see Sabrina, like, she'll kind of shrug, she'll like gesture for like more noise, she'll fist pump. And she does it, like she finds the right times to do it. And there are definitely moments where she still forces up 3-pointers. And I think we've seen some of that in game one. We saw a little bit of that, frankly, in the Aces series too. But like she is being a little bit more selective. And when she takes those kind of like quote unquote hero ball shots, or like the threes that so often you associate with Steph Curry that are just like these deep threes that maybe feel a little forced, and sometimes they go down and sometimes they don't. But I do think there is kind of a maturity there that she knows to pick her spots more. And you see when she does, like the crowd really does erupt. It really does. They really do enjoy it. And it does make a big difference for New York and for, the opposing team who's having to play the Liberty in Barclays Center.
Yeah, I love that you bring up maturity, because I think that's you hit the nail on the head. It speaks to this growing maturity in her game, where she doesn't necessarily just have to be a lights out 3-point shooter. There are so many other things that she can do that make a huge difference for them, whether or not the shot's going, whether she's being trapped, whether, you have Nafisa Collier switched onto her, like it's whether it's getting off the ball and letting Stewie be an initiator, or it's, more, driving into the rim, getting layups, using that mid-range shot, using that floater that she worked so hard on, like there's so much more versatility in her game now. And as a result of that, I think an increasing level of control as well. Like this game, she only took 9 shots. She had 15 points on 9 shots, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 steals. But she didn't cost them anything when the defensive coverage changed or was presenting something more difficult for her. And they talked about this in practice as well, where, Sabrina said, like, game one, they're switching Collier onto her, and she was just trying to attack her at times. And you kind of just wanted to be like, hey, like, that's Nafisa Collier. You don't need to try to isolate her, like, and throw up these like mid-range air balls. And she did say, like, there are times when we do get the it could have been Stewie, but it was talked about in practice where you get mismatch advantages, or you think that it's an advantage, but really the advantage lies somewhere else on the court, and you have to be a little bit more patient and figure out exactly where that is. And I thought that was a big change in their offense overall. And it was a weird statistical contrast too, because I think one of the beneficiaries of that was Jonquel Jones, who had 14 points and 9 rebounds. Now, game one, she had 19 points. So you look at it and you say, well, like, how does that make sense? But I think it was just the way in which the Liberty went about utilizing her, especially in critical moments, when it felt like the Lynx were going to make a comeback. Like in game one, it was sort of Jonquel got her shots like when she got him. It wasn't like she was intentionally being set up as much as she was in game two. And it just made the offensive experience just a lot cleaner.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about like control and New York feeling like senses of control, because I think that was one of the things that was so frustrating to them about letting game one slip away, is like they have so many different options that they can turn to, that they feel like that they can dictate how the game is played, at what pace, at what style, about who's going to have a good night, who's going to, maybe struggle on both ends of the floor. Like they believe that if they play their game, that they should be able to beat Minnesota. And I think a lot of that really does stem back to Sabrina Ionescu, as you're talking about, that like her game has continued to evolve in such a way that like, Becky Hammon talked about it. She is the head of the snake for the New York Liberty. She is the motor. She is the driver. Like Breanna Stewart might be their best player, is the 2-time league MVP. Jonquel Jones, as you mentioned it, she also has an MVP on your resume. But like Sabrina Ionescu has arguably been their best player this postseason. I mean, night in, night out. She hasn't been this finals. Let's be clear there. Like game 1 was not her night. And she was just, she was good in game 2, but it was not like a vintage Sabrina performance yet.
No, but she was a plus 20, which was the best marker on the team.
Right. But, and it reflects like she knows to pick her spots, whether that is to playing into the crowd or what kind of shots she wants to get. Like I think, and I tried to write about this in the story, like she is in such control of her game. Like she knows what to bring out of her bag at different times. It was really interesting in reporting that story out. Like I talked to her trainer, the person she works out with in the off season, and he was kind of saying that, all these players do tons of drills. They all work on different aspects of their shot, floaters, ball handling. You hear it as you talk to players. You've talked to so many people and like heard so many of the same things. One of the things I had never really heard before is a trainer being like, Sabrina will say, okay, if the task is to have a catch and shoot sequence in which she needs to make 20 deep 3-pointers and I need to make the last 5 consecutively, she'll be like, oh, okay, they all need to be swishes. Or like they're doing a drill that will be, and I wrote about this too, like her trainer remembered another drill, hitting 5 one dribble, same hand, same foot floaters. But the last 3 have to be banked in and she can't use her right hand as a guide hand, like as she does it. Just like Sabrina will put in these challenges to make the drills tougher because like she said the phrase chase perfection. Like, and basically like, she wants to feel that confidence that she can go to any shot in any moment. And I think we saw some of that in that Las Vegas Aces series when she was closing out game 2 specifically. Like she was so good in that fourth quarter and there were just these shots, left-handed layup off the glass, like a right-handed over Asia Wilson, where it's like, wow, she's just dipping into her bag and like bringing everything out. And it stems from a confidence from the work she's put in a healthy offseason that she can go to all these shots. And I think that is what made New York so dangerous during the regular season. And it's also what makes them so dangerous over these next couple games in the finals, because like, how are you going to defend her? Like there isn't an easy way to stop her. And she's seeing at this point, like every look there is to throw at someone.